Okay, I'm at work, so forgive me if the phone goes off, but this is my work desk, so. Also, I don't have any note cards because I'm at work, so. Using our resources. Alright. Each semester, we add new classes to our busy schedules. With the new classes comes new professors and teachers, and a stack of syllabi that includes our course outlines, rules for the classes, and the dreading requirements we all hate buying: textbooks. Over the past 10 years, inflation has nearly resulted in the average cost of textbooks to quadruple for the average college student, resulting in nearly 65% of students to even skip out on acquiring the required textbooks due to simply not being able to afford them. That information comes from CBS News in an article titled "What's Behind the Soaring Cost of College Textbooks," published in 2018 and written by Kathy Kristoff, a freelance journalist for CBS News. Additionally, with the cost of textbooks even being so high, often at times it's a complete waste of a student's time, money, and even resources to even purchase them. At the beginning of the semester, I purchased 7 textbooks for my classes here at Ball State University. Only 2 I have used on a daily basis. 2 textbooks I haven't even opened once. Realizing that I've wasted money, as well as pages among pages of paper resources, today I will introduce to you an online alternative I believe all schools and universities should incorporate to student curriculums and how it can save students money each year on textbooks costs. First, I will tell you a little bit about textbook requirements and how prices have rose over the years. Textbooks are required in nearly almost all classes at universities across the nation, as well as primary and secondary education. As stated by Kristoff in the previously stated source, materials that a student needs to participate in a class are increasingly put behind a paywall. But why is this? Stated by an article from Business Insider in 2018 by publishers Gina Echevarria and Jordan Bowman, almost 80% of the textbook industry is dominated by 5 major publishers, including Pearson and McGraw-Hill. Each year, they do everything in their power to keep their textbooks high by creating new editions. This prevents students from purchasing low-cost, used options. Also stated by Echevarria and Bowman in the previous source, it's not unreasonable for students to spend nearly $500 or even more a year on book fees because of the rise in costs. They also mentioned that just from 2008 to 2018, there was a 67% rise in book fees, which is resulting in a major strain on college expenses. Now that I've introduced you to the textbook costs and requirements students have for classrooms and courses, I'm going to talk to you about the effects surrounding the use of these paper resources. The first effect is your time. Each semester, you spend time carefully looking for which ones you need, putting them in your cart, and even observing which site has them the cheapest. Secondly, your paper resources. In a reference handbook titled "Recycling in America," published in 1997 by Deborah Strong, an environmental writer and consultant, she noted that at least 2 billion books a year are published in the United States. In the long run, think about how many trees had to be cut down for that annual result. With ebooks and digital libraries, trees and our environment can be saved immensely. And third and final effect is your student learning. With the increased amount of digital technology over the past 30 years, students have adapted to the use of digital learning on tablets and computers. In an article from the Washington Post titled "Why Textbooks Don't Work in Her Schools," written in 2012 by Jay Matthews, he points out that textbooks simply just don't work well anymore. He even mentioned that research proved that they did not increase student achievement unless teachers actually knew what worked and what didn't. Now that we understand the requirements, costs, and effects, I'm going to introduce you an alternative for schools and universities to adapt to due to the amount of digital learning throughout our country. Because textbooks are so vastly expensive and perhaps not frequently used, an alternative for students should be offered by education systems to benefit the well-being of the students. For example, according to CBS News article mentioned above by Krista Kristoff, a number of schools are starting to adopt a new method of textbook usage called OER, or Open Education Resource. This allows the cost of educational materials to be reduced dramatically. Basically, it allows any student to be able to access it at any time on a digital platform. Lastly, it saves the students from purchasing entire textbooks that they may only need to use for a handful of times. An example of a college using this method is Greenfield Community College in Massachusetts. They use this open access in over half of their general education courses. It allowed students to spend an average of $31 per course compared to the national average of $153 per course. Krista Kristoff mentioned this in her article on CBS News. This online database works much like a library research databases, allowing students to simply search a class, a section, a teacher, and click right on the textbook that they need to find an answer, start a project, or study for a test. Finally, to finish things up, textbooks are something that are used across the country in and out of schools and universities. Being a student myself, these costs have personally affected me, especially being in the middle of a pandemic. Hopefully after today, you've seen why I'm trying to show people that there can be a lower cost alternative for education requirements. Education should not be any more than it already is. Therefore, I hope by examining the costs, the effects it has on time, paper resources, and your individual learning, you too can advocate for universities and schools to make the change.